Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. You know, for the first 16 weeks of the NFL season, Sam Darnold looked like a franchise quarterback reborn. Talks of an extension on one end or big deal somewhere else on the other. But the final two games of the Vikings season has many wondering what to make of Darnold's time in Minnesota this offseason. We've got questions. Thankfully, we've got Charles Davis for some answers. We'll talk Sam Darnold and some other things timely here in the NFL. Charles, great to be with you. So when we talk about the Vikings, it's tough because they just joined the other teams in the offseason. They had a fantastic run, but the question still remains what to do at quarterback. What are your thoughts?
First of all, always great to be with you, Tommy. Second of all, can you believe for the Vikings, it's the second time in 3 years they've won 13 or more games and lost their first playoff game? That's unbelievable, right? You just don't accumulate those kind of numbers and not advance in the playoffs, but it's happened to them twice. At the risk of recency, you would think everyone around the Minnesota camp, obviously the fans, I think they're ready to see J.J. McCarthy because the last two games did not go well for Sam Darnold and the Vikings team, offense, etc. But he played pretty darn well throughout the season. He was targeted to be their quarterback by Kevin O'Connell and his staff because he knew him from the past. He thought their style of coaching and Sam's talents would match together well. And Kevin O'Connell was proven right throughout the season. The difference for me with this one is J.J. McCarthy almost sets up like Patrick Mahomes did when he came in with Kansas City. You played behind a quarterback who gave you a bunch of wins, got you to the playoffs. That was Alex Smith. And then you were ready to go the next year. The major difference is J.J. McCarthy was hurt this year. You know, Patrick Mahomes was in practice all the time. He was there, started last game of the season. McCarthy was on IR all year. So all that coming together, I would make a great offer to Sam Darnold, Tommy, and see if he would come back. But if I wouldn't break the bank for him, I would move forward with J.J. McCarthy if Sam Darnold doesn't accept their offer. And he may get bigger offers from quarterback-needy teams around the league.
I think you bring up some great points. Let's go under the assumption, as you talked about, it's going to be J.J. returning from injury, starting quarterback for KOC in Minnesota. In terms of Sam Darnold, we've seen their sort of pay scale of tiers. There's the 50-plus, and then there's the Baker Mayfield's 30, 35, and if we even maybe adjust for inflation, 40 or million or so per year. Do you think Sam fits into that Baker Mayfield type of tier?
Because people are so quarterback needy, he probably does. You know, the Buccaneers got a bargain with Baker, but again, it was much more of a he still had to prove it. Does Sam Darnold prove it with this one season? I think he was on course for doing it, but the last two games have set off people like us, Tommy, where all we're doing is chattering about, is he really worth the money now? Is it really there? The other thing I keep thinking, if I'm Sam Darnold, I had the best year of my career, under a terrific coach, a great system, wonderful people to throw the ball to, turn around and hand it to. I'm a first-round pick who's got some money, and I really don't get into people's money, but maybe Sam Darnold's at a stage of his life where maybe the top dollar isn't the key, the right situation is, and if so, then Minnesota's got a chance to have him back.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Let's stay in the division and talk about the Lions. We're seeing the video here of them taking on Minnesota. You know, I was on this desk the day after when Dan Campbell had a press conference talking about David Montgomery, and even Dan Campbell thought that David Montgomery was done for the year. Things have changed since then, and before I get your thoughts there, it'd be interesting to see, you know, what he thinks the chances of having Sonic and Knuckles back here, given what we've seen from Jahmyr Gibbs in his absence, Charles.
Yeah, I think he would be thrilled to have Sonic and Knuckles back, but I also think that they will approach it cautiously because they've done quite well with just Sonic. So you don't have to bring Knuckles back and make him a full-time guy. Maybe if you're fortunate and your team plays well, you can ease him into it so that your 1-2 punch becomes more predominant as you keep advancing. Obviously, they have this first one that's coming up. Here we go. If they're able to get through that, you get to a conference championship game. He's a week healthier. And then after that, you get 2 weeks to the Super Bowl. You see where I'm going with this? Can they nurse their way through it with him and then have him really be that sledgehammer that they absolutely need as they peak? Obviously, it's a balance. You have to see how it goes. Plus, we know he may be back, but we just don't know at what capacity yet, do we? We don't know if he's really, truly 100% until that game really starts, and then we find out from there. But yes, having him around, and being able to tell the team, yo, Knuckles is back, that'll give them a big lift.
Yeah, and we know Detroit scoring points is not the problem. It's if they can get the other team to not score as many as them on that football field. All right, let's get to our game on CBS in the divisional round. It's going to be Ravens and Bills, a rematch from earlier in the season in a game that saw Derrick Henry rush for nearly 200 yards in that Ravens blowout win. What is going to be the key for Buffalo this time around, Charles?
Well, I think you already spelled it out, Tommy, because it's got to be number 22. It's got to be Derrick Henry. And I realize Lamar Jackson may very well win the MVP. But I do think that the way that they're going to approach this game, and I actually talked to two former head coaches yesterday because we were talking about this game and others. And I just said to both of them, and they were offensive-minded head coaches, I said, okay, Sunday night in Western New York, in Buffalo, likely be in single digits by the time they kick off. What does your play sheet look like on your first 15 if you're Baltimore calling plays? And both of them individually, Henry, play action pass, Henry, Lamar off of a keeper, Henry. Both of them made the same point. Single digit, even though you're in Buffalo and you're used to it, Tommy, you want to deal with 250 pounds coming at you every single time behind that big offensive line that's built to mash? We'll find out then. Like I always say, you ask yourself if you really want to be a football player if by the third quarter you're still trying to tackle Derrick Henry on a single-digit night in Buffalo. That's going to be the plan for Baltimore. And I think Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, has stuck with the run better this year than he has in the past. And if it's working, they're not going to get away from it. Buffalo knows it's coming, but they play that 4-2-5 base. Everyone's got to be ready to tackle in a big way in this one.
You hinted at how early they need to be successful in avoiding what we're seeing right now, which was the big run the first time that these two met. I will say, and many are pointing out, Charles, I'm curious to get your thoughts. No Matt Milano, other injuries in that first matchup, a little bit more reinforcements here in round two.
Absolutely, and it's a great point, Tommy. I mean, Matt Milano is one of the best players out there. Remember, he was an all-pro before being hurt this year. Where I worry most, though, is up front. Okay, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, the inside tackles, they've got to be ready to go. Greg Rousseau, A.J. Epinesa, longer, leaner type players. They're going to have to use their arms and extend and hold the point of attack to allow players like Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, to make those types of plays. Taron Johnson, the nickelback, will be a much more prominent tackler, of course, as will be Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin at the safety position. But it's the accumulation over time, Tommy, as you know. If somehow Henry gets to 25 or more carries, then you know Baltimore's having a good night. That's what you're trying to avoid. You got to keep him up from touching it that often. I'd much rather Lamar Jackson beat me over the top than Derrick Henry beat me up running the football.
Again, that rematch Sunday night on CBS. Let's get to the Cowboys, which big news this week. Mike McCarthy not retained. He's no longer in the fold. And now there's a report that Deion Sanders could be a return to Dallas, but in a head coaching position here. Your thoughts?
You know, people look at Deion Sanders so many times still like it's a novelty, like it's something that's just out of the realm. Go back and trace his coaching career. Okay, Deion started coaching with the high schools and working his way through, right? He takes over at Jackson State and HBCU, makes them an instant winner there, gets it done. Recruits a player that was the #1 player in the country who was going to Florida State, and he comes to Jackson State with him. That's, of course, Travis Hunter. Then he moves on to Colorado. Everybody's like, he'll get his now. And they have a rough first year, and he flips it around this year and has a Heisman Trophy winner, and they legitimately played better as that season went on. He put the time in to be a coach, not just a novelty act. Yeah, we know he's Coach Prime. We know there's the flash. Like, how many of us are rocking gold headsets, okay? That's who he is. Excuse me, Tommy. But at the end of the day, he coaches a football team, and players got better, and he recruited good players. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, this is a legit thing I'm thinking about, because he's going to bring a staff with him that has some pro roots with it. Remember, Pat Shurmur's his offensive coordinator at Colorado. Okay, Pat's a former two-time head coach in the NFL. Phil Lodeholt, former offensive player in the NFL, is his offensive line coach. I could go on and on with different guys. I would definitely be entertaining this possibility. And let's face it, if he does, Tommy, I'm buying your popcorn, because you and I are sitting there and we are just watching that bad boy and just munching, because it is just going to be great. But it's a legit thing, not just theater.
Yeah, he's got all the bling. He's got the sunglass deal. He's got all the things we want and more. Oh, yeah, and he's a good football coach, too. Charles, certainly appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on HQ, talking NFL.